You're listening to Elite Athletic Performance.
So, episode number 2, Elite Athletic Performance. The plan for this podcast is to release weekly episodes. If we do not release weekly episodes, we have basically projects that we're working on, or we have seminars that we're working on. So, for today's topic, we're going to look into overtraining, how to address overtraining, how overtraining can basically affect other modes of mobility and lifestyle, and then we're going to go into basically recovery and regeneration. So, let's start off with basically the main topic, overtraining. How do we exactly define what is overtraining?
That's a good question. Overtraining, I think people, typically they would define it in a very nonchalant way, I would say. They say, well, I'm overtrained. Well, overtraining, actually, there's several different breakdowns of that term. First of all, there's overreaching, which is basically you had a tough workout, maybe 2 days later, you start getting delayed onset muscle soreness. You're starting to feel sore. Then there's overtraining, which is basically now that continues going. You continue going with that, continue training with that. You start getting into some possible muscle damage, right? And also affecting maybe some local physiology. Then you get into overtraining syndrome. Now, that's a different story. That one involves either typically a shift in hormonal changes, and that affects the hypothalamic pituitary axis. And there's two types within that realm. There's what we call parasympathetic, and you have sympathetic. Sympathetic is typically what we also is very similar to Basedoid disease, and parasympathetic is very similar to Addison's disease. The symptoms are fairly similar. Obviously, the one with the intensity, or sympathetic, that involves in high intensity training. So typically, sprinters would get that. You have the other one, parasympathetic, is more akin to people who have endurance or sort of endurance-related sports. So if they're doing a lot of high-volume endurance training, they'll tend to get into that sort of overtraining.
Moving back to muscle fatigue, because certain people will train and they'll say, oh, I'm fatigued the next day, or I'm sore the next day, and some people would say, oh, that's a good indicator I had an effective workout. How can basically one differentiate between this type of fatigue, at least muscle fatigue? Like, how do I know that if I feel sore today, it was because of an effective workout, and if I feel the next day, because I'm overtrained? How could we kind of break that down?
Muscle soreness is somewhat subjective. I mean, it's hard to. You could use a algometer, which is a device that they use to measure pressure, and you can put that on an area, and you can push down. I mean, and a certain point when it elicits a certain amount of sensitivity, you record the measurement and give you somewhat of a relatively objective measurement of discomfort.
Would there be any other practical tests that people don't have access to, like this type of equipment, like a basic grip strength? Like, is there any type of just holding a barbell for
muscle soreness? I use the indication if you have stairs, so you have to climb stairs. Let's just say you did a squat workout on Monday, okay, and the next day, you're not too bad, but by the end of the day, because as muscle soreness starts kicking in, you're starting to have a hard time walking upstairs. Now that could be subjective. I mean, I usually would determine that is, do I have spring in my step? If that, because if you haven't trained for a bit, you feel a bit lighter, and if you're starting to feel heavy, that's usually an indication of what we call mild muscle soreness or mild, soreness. If you're starting to have problems walking upstairs, like your grandmother's trying to beat. I don't know, maybe your grandmother's fit. I don't know. Let's just say some guy that some behemoth that you normally work out with, you can kick this guy up the stairs, no problem. All of a sudden now he's beating you up the stairs at a normal pace. That's muscle soreness. That's gonna okay. You got a little bit too much there.
Okay.
So I would use walking, and just walking upstairs or just walking to determine am I light on my step or am I heavy on my step or am I sore going up the stairs? Am I noticing my workout from the previous day?
Okay. And is there any type of kind of like window of this soreness of how long it should last. Because for some, like sometimes you like some people will work out and they might feel sore the next day and that's it. Some people might feel sore for the next 3 to 4 days.
Yeah, typically the levels of compounds that, and without going into detail, that these things take time to build up in the system. Usually it's about 48 hours,
48 hours, okay.
right? It tends to stay with you for about another 72, possibly 96 hours. If it doesn't dissipate after that, you got some problems.
Then there's a problem.
You should
Okay.
typically dissipate, and you can when we talk about recovery, we'll talk a bit more how to facilitate faster
Yeah.
removal of these waste products.
So let's take a step outside of simply training and being inside the gym that causes overtraining. What are some other, like, let's say, lifestyle factors that could influence overtraining or provide a greater potential of being overtrained?
That's a very good question. And you know what? A lot of people would think about, okay, you know what? Yeah, sleep is definitely one of them. I'm going to tell you some stuff that most people don't even think about. Maybe you've heard of it. Maybe some people out there have already heard of it, or maybe they're already thinking about it right now. The biggest factor, I would say, is two things. First, you have the use of electronic devices at nighttime.
Okay, so we might be entering a rabbit hole here. So everybody, get your
Yeah.
tin cans out. Let's.
Yeah. So what I'm talking about is using your tablets,
Your cell
or your
phones and
cell
stuff like
phones,
that.
or your computers, or
Yeah.
even watching the newer TVs, for example.
Yeah. Anything that shoots out certain frequencies.
Yeah,
or-
they're shooting
even
out
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi will actually affect it too. Yeah,
Okay.
you would try to tell people to turn off their Wi-Fi.
What about Bluetooth? I've heard Bluetooth is not.
Bluetooth, same thing.
Same thing, okay.
But getting back to these electronic
Electronics,
devices, like with screens on them, they emit a blue light, and with that blue light, the frequency actually affects the pineal gland, which basically
Yes.
releases melatonin. Melatonin is, quote, what the stuff that dreams are made of. You can't, when you get into REM sleep, you're basically releasing a large amounts of melatonin,
Yeah.
basically. So using the computer at nighttime and these things will definitely affect the quality of release, and also making sure. I think most people don't do this, and even before electronics came about, making sure the room is really dark
Yeah.
and the temperature is around 60, I guess 65 or something around that temperature. So you're not too hot, you're not too cold. You want it actually a little bit cool, actually, because once you put the blanket on and stuff like that, you want it too cold, because then you'll put more blankets on, you might overheat.
Yeah. It's interesting when you describe that blue light. Actually, Apple, at least from what I'm aware of, recently gave out this new option where you can basically time your screen to change it from like this blue emitting light to this more yellowish kind of hue.
Wow. Okay, that's good.
And,
That's
What's
somebody's thinking.
What's your thoughts on? Do you think the best option is literally just put your goddamn phone away?
Well, yeah. I mean, this is
That would be the ideal option,
that,
right?
because it depends what you're watching. I mean, you're watching porn, or you're watching you're watching like people getting killed, right?
Yeah.
Some movie or something like that, or the worst is actually watching news. News tends to get your brain going, and
Yeah.
so you want to be able to shut down. You want to be able, after like 9 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
You got to start thinking about, okay, how am I going to shut myself down here?
Okay,
Right?
so kind of slowly bring the mind from a
Yeah,
active state into
turn off the cell phone, turn
Yeah.
off the TV, turn off the tablet,
Yeah.
turn off the Wi-Fi if you can.
Mhm.
Prepare yourself just how you would, I would basically say, use sleep as a workout. That is your, like, you want to warm up for your sleep,
Yeah.
you're going to warm up for your workout the same
Yeah.
way.
And treat sleep as a workout, because that's where your recovery and your actual muscle
That's-
gain and
That is the biggest natural hormone release
Growth
you're going to
hormone
get.
release, yeah.
Growth hormone release.
Yeah.
You're going to get without,
besides Jimmy down the street who's giving you some trend.
exactly
Whatever, but,
besides Jimmy there.
Yeah.
Or I think was it Brad last week?
I don't know. They keep changing their names.
They keep changing their
run away
names.
from the cops.
That's
and the
right.
DA.
So that's those. I mean, sleep is definitely a big thing. The other thing I would limit myself now. Is nowadays, because of legalization issues and all that, people are doing narcotics or marijuana and stuff.
Yeah.
These things definitely have been shown to affect sleep, and the big thing here is lay off the Red Bull. I mean, I don't want to or lay off. Let me rephrase that. Lay off any energy drinks.
Disclaimer: Red Bull, if you do wish to sponsor us in the future, we'll
Yeah,
reconsider.
we do use Red Bull before workouts. Myself, I don't particularly use it, but I know I don't discourage any of my athletes that I work with if they want to have a little shot of Red Bull. So make sure we got that clear.
For future reference, of course.
Yeah, so any sort of high energy drinks or high glucose, fructose sort of drinks before bed, definitely not a good thing to do. And obviously, and I like to say caffeine, but some people are what we call responders. Some people are called non-responders to caffeine. So it really depends. I'm not going to say but typically I would say overall, definitely stay away from caffeine if you can. It also has some other effects too, because it will kind of limit that sleep, getting into that sleep mode.
Yeah. Okay. So, your take on electronics, no go for in terms when it comes to.
I would say, listen, you know what? If you can, try to shut it down after 9 o'clock, because it's going to take at least another hour, 2 hours before you kind of get things. If you're going to go to bed around 11 o'clock at night, gonna need about an hour and a half at least to kind of get your ZMA in there, your supplements, to kind of help with your GH release, right?
So besides electronics and the caffeine, what other factors could potentially affect your sleep? Because that's where your recovery is going to happen, the majority of it, right?
Definitely making sure the room is adequate for that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you even have to use an eye mask.
What about hydration?
This is interesting. Some people can drink and no problem. Other people, they usually wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. So I would, again, limit your hydration between, breakfast to lunch. I would have the most amount of hydration. And then after lunch, start limiting the amount of water you take in. That way, at nighttime, you basically, you don't have to worry about too much going.
What about the caloric intake? Like, let's say after lunch, as you kind of progress into dinner time, and then
that's a good question. I would eat. I like the paleo diet from certain perspectives, like a nut, berry, and meat sort of breakfast, which has a high amount of acetylcholine and tyrosine in there. And then as you progress near the evening, most people are, some people work out typically in the evening. Myself, I tend to work out more in the evening than in the morning. So it fits really nicely with my schedule. So I'll have a higher carb meal at nighttime, which kind of suits that reality, because the higher carb meal will release more tryptophan, and tryptophan basically will help with release of serotonin, melatonin, the stuff the dreams are made of.
So in terms of the caloric intake, it should be kind of more based off of your lifestyle and how it fits in with your own training of how you should kind of divide the calories.
Yeah, you shouldn't eat too much before you go to bed, because remember, bedtime is really, your blood flow is going to be diverted. It's going to be going back to the internal organs. Your body does housekeeping at nighttime.
Yeah,
so
maintenance, right? Yeah.
You want to be able to encourage that reality, because all of a sudden now you're starting to eat a big meal.
It takes all that energy or that.
Yeah, you're going to have to stay up another hour or so
Yeah.
for that to kind of start to work its way, and it's going to divert blood flow away from the brain and whatnot.
Okay. So we addressed how basically there's certain factors that can affect your sleep, which can therefore affect your recovery, and it could potentially lead into overtraining.
Right.
Besides sleep, what else could basically cause overtraining to happen, or
Well, the obvious is basically your lifestyle as well. So we haven't really touched. I know everybody's like waiting for me to talk about training. I'm talking about your lifestyle.
Yeah. We have to unpack things. Like, don't worry, we're gonna get to there.
Yeah. So we're looking at lifestyle. We're looking at are you a social butterfly, partying all the time?
Yeah.
Do you just your overall lifestyle, how you package your life? That will make a huge difference. Coaching an athlete at the elite level, the job of the coach is not necessarily, here, do 10 push-ups, whatever. The real job of the coach is to manage the stress and take off the stress for the athlete. So basically, the athlete has to focus on only, a few things: training and how am I going to recover. Just to kind of give you an example here, when I worked with, I had a little stint with Ben Johnson a while back, and Ben was telling me how he would prepare for a race sometimes, and he would literally just sit on the couch a couple of days. Like, he would really limit his amount of nervous energy he would be expending, to the point where basically if you wanted a sandwich, you would go, "Mom, I want a sandwich." Or he would, if he had to go somewhere, he would
Yeah.
ask somebody, first of all, if they could pick up something for him.
Yeah.
Or, worst comes to worst, take him to the place to pick up, so he doesn't have to drive,
Yeah.
right?
Wow, is that intricate, that detailed in terms of
Yeah,
the expenditure of
just
energy?
trying to save as much
Yeah,
energy.
yeah.
I mean, imagine your iPhone. You don't want to you don't want to use that too often in one sense, especially if you're going on the net or downloading like high amount of pictures and stuff. It's
Yeah.
going to sap up a lot of power.
A lot of
right?
energy, yeah. Yeah.
So same thing with sprinting. It's a very high nervous system involved in sport. Every last little bit counts, right? And so it's that kind of detail that also made him successful.
Yeah. A way that you really summed this up really well, because I remember I came to you once and you drew me out a diagram. You gave me a circle, and then you gave me certain subdivisions within that circle.
That's right.
And the idea behind that was basically these are various percentages of energy that you have during the day, and every subdivision is taking a certain amount of energy. And then you're left with only so much in terms of training. And obviously, yes, that
Yeah.
varies from different lifestyle to lifestyle, but that's definitely something to look
So
at.
yeah, that one there is basically looking at so imagine a circle, and that circle represents your potential. And then we start cutting away at that circle internally, taking off little chunks. And each of these chunks, depending on the magnitude of stress they create, it could be like your school, your work, family, whatever, your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. All these things, and then training as well. Previous training, previous injuries you've had. All these things are whittling away at your potential. So what you're left with in the middle, is your actual potential. And so that sometimes the best training is the best warm up. Not necessarily. People come in and see me sometimes, and I always ask them, what was their day like, how are they feeling today, and I've had this plan. I want to do some, let's say, deads or squats or something like that, and they come in here, they're pretty stressed out, they're pretty tired. There's no way I'm going to make that guy do that kind of workout because it's going to dig him into a hole again. So instead, what I'm going to do is make them do like a stretch session or maybe a circuit session, which basically just flushes them out. Everybody who's left here always feels like, I feel that was a good workout. That's
Yeah.
what I needed, and
Yeah.
that's basically what you have to look at. You're not going to lose anything.
Yeah.
It's just basically your body based on that day is how it's working.
Yeah, I specifically remember I gave you a visit one time, and I knew I was overtrained because I was feeling very fatigued and my energy was just not at a normal level. And after you did some body work on me, it's like I felt like I was reborn. I think you specifically remember that, like you mentioned the pep in your step. Like I felt maybe 20, 30 pounds lighter on my feet.
Yeah, that's it.
And I noticed like literally after that session, since then my sleep has been amazing, and it's a little bit more consistent as well. So it's also interesting how when you're actually overtrained, your body can actually lock up in certain ways too.
Yeah.
For me, for example, was like I had very tight hamstrings, and you had to release that. Kind of talking about that, how can we talk about how basically overtraining can affect your posture, like in terms of like your actual lifestyle?
So one of the things I do when I assess people is I look at their posture when they first come in. Obviously, I'm looking at how they're walking and stuff like that. What they're saying, obviously, is the other thing too. But their posture is a dead giveaway of how they. And a lot of times, there's what we call a formal measurement, and there's informal. Informal is just sometimes you stand and you just talk to them, or they're sitting and you watch how they're sitting. How they're sitting will give you indication of where they might have some what we call fascial restrictions. We'll definitely dwell into that a little bit later on, and about fascial restrictions and how it affects the body in terms of contortions and stuff like that. But getting back to this idea of injuries, posture and overtraining. So there are a couple of muscles that will definitely shut down, I would say, and I put that in quotes. Basically, they'll decrease their firing output, and most of them are innervated, have the same innervation Let me rephrase that. They have the same nerve innervation that innervates your adrenals. So they share the same nerve pathway. And these muscles are your shin muscles on either side, like your muscles at what we call your perineals, your tibialis anterior, tibialis posterior, your sartorius muscle, the gluteus medius, right? So in psoas muscle, amongst others. These are in pec minor, biceps, where it crosses over to the elbow. that tendon there will be very tender sometimes, right up the subclavius muscle, which is right underneath your collarbone, closest to your breastbone. So these muscles there typically will, when the adrenals get tired and you're starting to get fatigued, they will start to shut down. Now, what's the consequence of that overall? Well, if these muscles start not working properly, or they decrease the nervous firing, what's going to happen? You're going to see a slump in the posture, or sometimes you'll see people with their posture, they're kind of leaning forward. It's almost like they're ready to go, like flight or fright. They haven't turned off the system yet. When you stand up, 2/3 of your weight should be on your heels. Right? 1/3 should be on the forefoot. As you walk, you transfer the load. Right? But if you're tired, what happens is that weight, your weight, you can't go back on your heels, so your weight goes always on your forefoot. Once it goes on your forefoot, your back starts to lock up, and then it creates. And if depending how long it's been there, it's going to get into what we call a restriction. So your body will start getting into a motor pattern that says, "Okay, this is how you want me to sit." So there's definitely indications that certain postural abnormalities, like a hip height, a hip that's very high, rather, or shoulder that's high or low, depending on the magnitude of that, or any torques in the body, will give you indication that definitely certain muscles are tight, and the person is not necessarily overtraining. Maybe they could be, or they're more likely could be overreaching, right?
For the physical assessments you do with your clients, I know that you have 2 weight scales. Could that be a good test for anybody to kind of use? Step on 2 weight scales that are, pretty much the same, to see how the weight distribution is between your 2 feet?
So a couple of things there. First of all, you got to make sure the floor is level.
Yeah.
Number 2, you got to make sure that they're the identical scales.
Yeah.
It can't be two
Can't
separate.
be too different. Yeah. Different
And there was actually, I don't know exactly the phenomenon that occurs, but the scales have to be about a centimeter or so apart, because the actual, I forget the actual mechanism, but actually can affect, one scale can actually throw off of the other scale. Right?
Okay.
And again, the problem with using it yourself is that as soon as you look down, you'll shift your weight onto it.
Okay.
Right?
I got
So what you really need to do is sort
Maybe
of like
get
look
a-
straight ahead, and
yeah.
then if you get your iPhone, sort of
Record or take a picture, yeah.
You can take a picture of the scale,
Yeah.
and then look back, and then when you get off the scale, you can see where the weight shift is. Over time, all these things you should feel like. The clients that I work on a more regular basis, and sort of on the athletic end, they are pretty good beacons for their own sort of assessment. They'll tell me literally when they're off, and they're starting to feel heavy, or they're starting to feel, I'm putting more weight on one leg. They'll notice these small changes before actually they manifest into something greater, into injury. And at that point, they usually come to see me, or they'll try to do some soft tissue work on themselves and try to get it aligned, or take some time off maybe from training. So definitely injury and posture, there is a link there.
Okay. So I think we discussed the overtraining and how it can basically affect certain lifestyle patterns and stuff. So how can we actually address the issue of overtraining? How do we tackle it to basically counteract it?
Well, I think what we should do is kind of go back a little, because I think we missed one little step here. I think we should go back and talk about overtraining, as most people suspect it to be, or propose it comes from training. Like they figure out, like, the word overtraining means overtraining, right?
Yeah.
Too much training. So now, getting into that realm, there's definitely certain elements of training that will affect or influence your body's ability to recovery. So there is a weightlifter, a very recognized weightlifter, Alexei Vasilyev, and he competed in the Montreal 1976 Olympic Games, set a world record. He's probably the most decorated weightlifter. You go to any Olympic weightlifting circle and you mention Alexeyev, I mean, it's...
They'll know his name.
Yeah, he's like the Wayne Gretzky of weightlifting. He used to have a saying, you can't train on the nerve too often. And what he meant by that is any load above, for strength training, any load above 80% is training on the nerve. So you're involving more of your nervous system, which means now, I'm not saying you can't do that, just basically you got to plan out your workout now and plan out your regeneration. So if you can employ that training, you got to make sure the next day you're gonna have some recovery, or basically some time off.
So basically what this means for the average bro lifter or the bohemian lifter is that the whole go hard or go home, or give it 100% or nothing, you can't really apply that in terms of, basically if you do that, you're gonna basically overtrain. You can be overtrained at some point.
You have to look at all those other factors.
Yeah.
And then say, okay, like we said, that we talked about that circle,
Yeah.
after you cut off all that other stuff, okay, that's your actual. So you had this grandiose idea, you're going to train, do singles, 90% RM, doing singles for like 10, 12 sets of squats or something like that. All of a sudden now you go through that list and you realize, okay, there's not much left in the tank here.
Yeah.
So
I'm basically
you
going on fumes at this point.
Yeah, and you're either, chill out the workout or
Yeah.
basically, okay, you know what, maybe I train at 60, 70%
Yeah.
and still get some results as opposed to going at 90%. All of a sudden now, next 3-4 days, my immune system is shot and I'm
Yeah.
trying to recover from that workout.
Yeah. And I experienced this firsthand because like for the longest time, all I used to do was just basically train at 100% as long as possible. And then, sooner or later down the line, something happens, you're gonna get injured.
So you've got to plan out your training, and you also have to accommodate for life. You have to be able to
Give respect to other areas.
I'm
of
not
life.
saying you can't train past 90% or 80%.
Yeah.
Did Alexiev do stuff like that? Of course he did. But it was a certain time of the year, and it was planned. It was not something that was, okay, you know what, I feel good today, whatever, I'm gonna train like that. No, there was a plan to it. And again, that plan could change based on those other factors. If he didn't get enough sleep the night before, or some other stressors in his life, whatever, all of a sudden now, you know what, that 90% goes down to like 70-80% maybe, or even lower. Or maybe, he's really tired, and you know what, the best workout is the one that, didn't happen.
Okay. Okay.
The expression is, the best workout is the one that you're not doing. Right? So
Yeah.
you want to be able to have flexibility, and so you have to have options. And that's one of the things I try to tell or create for my clients is, if not this, then that.
Yeah. So if you have a certain indicator that how you're feeling a certain day,
Yes.
then that means you can't train. Let's say for our regular
Yes.
program, let's do a little offset kind of workout to
Yeah,
get you back in track.
and again, your planning is going to determine how you plan, and keeping in mind lifestyle factors, all the other factors we talked about before we even kind of dwelled on training. You want to be able to keep those in mind, and then establish your training from there. So if you're working, 5 in the morning, and or you're working at night, doing a night shift and stuff like that, you got to factor in now, where's my sleep, where's my nutrition, all this other stuff, before I get to the gym. So what you end up with maybe sometimes is a very much reduced workout. So
Yeah.
maybe you do your 90%, but it's like not 10 sets, but you're doing like 5,
Yeah. Okay.
right? Less is more. That's what I can tell you. That's the best advice to give. You can always train less, but to train more is risky, because then you then have to have the regeneration in place to employ that.
And it's very apparent too that, like, let's be honest here, when you have a natural athlete compared to an enhanced athlete, the enhanced athlete, his window of regeneration is a lot shorter compared to the
Well,
natural.
that's why
know.
to quote one of my profs, he used to say, athletes take drugs to compensate for inferior training and inferior training. I want to add to that, say they take drugs to compensate for inferior training, inferior regeneration, and improper lifestyle management. Those are 2 things I like to add to that quote. So those are the things I would look at again.
It's interesting because, like, what basically you're suggesting is that, okay, if you're trying to address overtraining, from your own personal perspective, like, okay, don't just look at how you're feeling or in terms of like how tight your body is in certain areas. Literally look at how is your lifestyle being divided up, and what areas in your life are taking up a lot of energy, and what areas are causing a lot of stress to build up.
If you want to imagine a pipe, different segments of a pipe, and you have the connectors in between. Each of these pipes each pipe represents a different aspect of your life, like your lifestyle, your training, your recovery methods, your nutrition. So you want to analyze each of these pipes, and if the pipes all connect together, right, and there's no obstruction in any one of the pipes, water just flows right through, right?
Yeah.
But if there's an obstruction in one pipe, or maybe half of one pipe, well, and then the outcome of that is going to be less water coming out, and water represents like your performance. So you want to look at these factors and say, well, where are the leaks in my system? And that's what I do over here at my workplace here. we basically look at where are the leaks in the system, and look at all possibilities as much as we can, and basically address it from there.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So I mean, that's those factors. Lifestyle. We talked about lifestyle.
We talked about electronics.
Sleep.
Electronics. You know,
Like
using electronics.
sleep.
How basically that blue type of light, how it,
Yes.
it messes with you. Was it your adrenal levels or was it a different type? Of
Melatonin.
melatonin. Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
So you want to look at those factors, and then if those factors are good,
Yeah.
you know what? Maybe you can train a little higher,
A little
heavier,
higher, okay.
right? And again, you don't want to be training, like say, 2 hard days back to back. So for the behemoths out there, you know what? You can't
The
train.
bro lifters, the bro scientists out
Yeah,
there.
you get your best workout is like a hard day, easy day, hard day, easy day,
Yeah.
and then you can only train like that for about two to 3 weeks before you have to give yourself a good week of, you know, sort of like drop the load considerably. And every 12 weeks, you've got to give yourself about a week or 2 weeks off,
Yeah.
because your body just cannot keep going up and up and up like that.
Yeah.
And actually, when you take the time off that you make your gains. Actually, you don't make your gains when you're training. You're actually breaking down the body.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, in one aspect I like to mention too is with speed work. Speed is another thing that you know, some of the guys out there who are listening, who are probably athletes and do speed training. Speed fatigues the system quite a bit. I mean, you got to really, and it's very sly in terms of its ability to create an overtraining effect. You may do like 5 or 6 sprints, and the next day you may have a hard time getting out of bed because you're just. It's like, imagine turning on your iPhone, putting on maximum brightness, turning on all the apps.
Yeah.
How long is that battery going to last?
A lot less than, you know.
Yeah, it's going to get into the red. So
Yeah.
when you don't want it to get into that red zone where, you know, even when you plug the phone in, right, you still can't even turn it on because there's not enough power just to turn
Just
on.
even record. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what speed training can do. So you have to watch it with the high intensity stuff and the speed. With the endurance training, it's very similar, but it has more of a metabolic effect. There is a nervous system element, but it's more of a metabolic effect. And it's basically creating a large amount of cortisol. We said eats away at muscle. That's why you see endurance athletes. They, you know, no offense out there, but you guys look like chickens.
Marathon runners.
And marathon runners versus, let's say, sprinters who are like, you know, pretty jacked, right?
Yeah.
At the same time, you don't want, you know, one guy's going to be your messenger boy, one guy's probably going to be your warrior. You
Yeah.
know? So
Yeah. That's such an apparent difference in physique too. Like you see it across the board. It's not like just like a one special case.
that's right. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. So, as we switch from overtraining, let's talk about how can we address it and recover.
Okay, so recovery, I break down recovery into several areas, right? One is before you even begin training, what did you do the day before? That will determine what your recovery should be or what you should be looking at. So let's give you an example here. Guy does speed work, okay, on Monday. He has to employ certain types of recovery techniques so he can do, let's say, weight training on Wednesday or the next day. If he's going to do some lower body weights, let's say, the next day. So each of these training elements sometimes require a different sort of mode of regeneration. And we can have a whole podcast and several podcasts on each of these one elements, but I'm just going to give you some basic stuff that most people probably do currently or probably have been popularized for whatever reason. One is the ice baths. People have been soaking themselves in tubs with buckets of ice in there.
Yeah. And now they have this new one called cryotherapy too.
That's right.
It's kind of blowing up all over the place.
Yeah. So ice is definitely a good mode, a good medium to heal. I mean, there's some controversy with respect to that as well. There's guys out there saying you don't need ice and you get swelling. I tend to subscribe to the fact that, you know what, if something's hurting, right? If I can put ice on it, it's going to kill the pain without having me to ingest something. I'll take that. And there is such a thing that occurs with ice. It's called the Huntington's phenomenon. It occurs to protect the tissue, and it bypasses your central nervous system, your autonomic or your voluntary nervous system, and it's basically there to, when the tissue gets a certain temperature, your body no longer can pump in that area. So what it starts to do is try to protect that tissue by causing a vasodilation, vasoconstriction of tissue to pump more fluid in and out. Right? So that usually occurs when the tissue is getting close to numb. So when you're using ice, it'll go through 4 phases typically. It'll get cold, it gets very cold, and then it feels like burning, and then it finally gets numb. Most gel packs they'll hit very cold. They won't get into what we call the critical stage of healing or regeneration for ice, which is basically burning. And so most people in the ice baths, I think they just get very cold, if you ask me. I've never done it myself, but I don't think they get into that burning or they're into that numb state. Because if you're in a numb state, basically, it's pretty dangerous. The other thing, too, with ice baths, practicality of it, okay? You got to get a lot of ice and all that kind of stuff. And then where did it come from? From my understanding, it came from football and rugby. And when these guys are basically going through a car wreck every game, for the most part, they have a lot of internal bruising, which cannot be, you either slap on like 50 ice packs in the guy, and he looks like he came from Antarctica and basically he's a Yeti, or he's got like, by that time I'm pretty sure his nuts have basically, got into his body and have receded. They're no longer there anymore. You could do that for that particular type of sometimes a type of sport. However, for the average person, I think it's overkill. What would be better would be going to doing contrast showers, hot and cold, right? If you don't have access to, like, say, a sauna and a cold pool, so if you go to in your local area, you got to get some Russian guys that some friends there, and they'll probably tell you where the closest banya is. A banya in Russian is a sauna house. What it is there, don't get any ideas here. It's a bunch of naked men in there.
Well, it depends on the day.
Depends on the day. If you go to family day, it's.
I would strongly suggest go family day, guys.
Yeah,
if you're alone.
Yeah, if you don't want to go commando, go on family day.
Yeah.
Usually they have that. But anyway, so what happens? You have this massive sauna. Sometimes you can put like at least 10, 15, 20 people in the sauna. It's a big sauna. And right after the sauna, they have a dunk, which basically is like a bucket, and they pull the lever, and
it's cold water.
It's cold water.
Yeah.
Then they have a very cold pool. So the idea is you go in the sauna, right, and then you dunk in the pool, and you go back in the sauna. You do this a couple of times. The idea is to get the your skin cold enough over a period of time so the heat from the sauna can penetrate deeper. Because initially when you go in the sauna, it's hot, right? And the skin will just basically burn almost, right? So you want to be able to cool the skin so that it allows that infrared heat to penetrate deeper. The other option is you can get, now over here and where we live here, there's a Korean sauna. And Korean sauna, everybody's got their own sauna, I think. Korean sauna is a little different. It's an infrared sauna, so it's a dry heat. When you walk into that sucker, you're not inundated with that kind of all of a sudden a wall of heat coming at you. It's a slow bake. It takes longer to penetrate you than the Russian sauna in a lot of ways, but in a lot of ways, it doesn't stress the system out as much as a Russian sauna. So if I were to do speed work, the best recovery really would be with the infrared sauna. If I was to do strength work, which involves, let's say now, more muscles in one sense, I would probably do the Russian sauna, right? The contrast with that. Again, everybody's sort of different. I've had a sprinter come up here for like a 1 week intensive. I took him to both places. And he didn't like being dunked in the going in the cold pool.
He didn't like the banya?
No, he didn't like that. He's from the Caribbean, so cold for him is like an ice cube. In a glass of water. That's cold for him. So
I remember the first time I did banya with you, and it was a pretty crazy experience because we went from like you said, from hot to cold and hot to cold, and just that basically the change of those two extreme environments. I became lightheaded. I don't know where I was. You know, my skin was like irritating. It was well, not irritating, but it was kind of like, you know, vibrating, I guess you could say, to a certain extent. And I'll tell you what, I had probably the best sleep of that whole year. And I woke up the next day
Yeah.
feeling like $1 million.
So again, it depends on the person. I tend to, you know, you can find research on this and stuff like that. I mean, I've got pretty extensive. I've done you know, one of my documents is translated into 18 languages, published in a core coaching textbook, and you know, in that, you know, I talk about all these types of regeneration methods, but my opinion is whatever works for you. That happens to be the one that's best. I mean, there's a lot of personal preference to certain, you know, everybody climatizes differently to heat, to cold, and you got to keep that in. And then also think of it this way too: if you go to you know, you've been an endurance athlete and you're out there with 35 degrees Celsius heat. I don't know what that's in Fahrenheit. Sorry about everybody else.
Or we're in the Canadian
yeah.
metrics.
You know, if you're going out there and you're sweating a lot, the last thing you want to go into is a sauna. Is going to sweat you. Is going to make you sweat more. So instead, what would be better would maybe be like it would probably be like a steam room, where you're absorbing some of that water, okay, through your skin as much as you are sweating a little bit, or better would be contrast bath, like so hot and cold, right? That would be a more better sort of method of recovery as opposed to using. At the same time, you know, it really depends. If it wasn't a very hot day, you didn't sweat a lot, your hydration's pretty good, you know what, maybe a sauna might do it, right? So, and if your nervous system, if you're feeling like really flat, I would probably use the infrared sauna, personally. I think because the body tends to create more of a sympathetic stimulation, in my opinion. And so if you're already, you know, sympathetic dominant from your training, the last thing you want to do, remember, what you want to do is, your training is going to take it to 11. You want to bring it down to a 1 or 2. That's where you're going to recover. That's why the recovery happens when your nervous system switches from that sympathetic to that parasympathetic state. So maybe another method, another obvious method is massage. So there's different types of massage.
Yeah.
But I would recommend and not everybody can afford a massage. So the foam rollers are not bad. These are sort of, again, how hard the roller is.
What about also the ridges?
Yes. So some rollers have ridges on them. I'm not a big fan about them. Again, depends on the tissue compliance. If something is very very tough, probably you want to beat it up a little bit. But again, you got to watch out, because the more you beat up tissue, you're going to get more inflammation, which basically can impede your recovery. The other thing with foam rollers is the direction in which you roll in. If you look at anatomy, muscle fibers are in a particular they have striations, and the striations are basically are in a certain direction. So you're going with the grain or you're going against the grain. How much pressure you use. There's other elements. I mean, these other implements like a lacrosse ball, stick. You can use softer lacrosse balls. You can combine them together. These are like self-massage tools. I think that are a big asset. We can always talk about that.
Yeah.
Maybe one day put a YouTube video on how to use all that.
Yeah, I think if we have like the visual representation of how to use these actual tools would be better than describing it.
Yeah.
To an extent.
Then there's the other things too, like cranial sacral work, which is basically involving calming down the cerebral spinal fluid that flows through the brain, which helps get into what we call a parasympathetic state. Like I said, with all these things here, we could definitely talk about a much greater detail. I'm just giving you like a list, like a little laundry list here. Another way would be like microcurrent, pretty effective, using biological resonance to kind of heal tissue. The obvious one is, going to be sleep, which you mentioned, and then the other thing too is nutrition. Carbohydrates are a big, lately carbs have been getting a pretty bad rap with the paleo movement and all that. You need carbs. You need carbs for your to feel good.
It's your main energy source, right?
It's your main energy source, and again, the expression is you got to earn your carbs. Like you don't want to just start pigging out in some donuts and fritters there, curlers. If you do that after workout, probably not the best thing, but you know what? It is carbs in one sense. You are getting refined carbs, but it is carbs.
No, we're not saying have donuts after your workout, guys.
That's right. We're not encourage that,
We're
but
not-
you know what? I know a lot of college kids who can't afford supplements and stuff like that, and they go they produce some pretty good numbers eating McDonald's, so or fast food. So I'm not going to knock the guys who talk about nutrition and all that, but at the same time, there's a lot more to it than just nutrition. So. So that's I would sort of look at these things, sort of the major areas, the sauna and the massage is the main sort of recovery thing. That's what I would look at.
And also the sleep and how those
Oh,
factors.
sleep,
can do that.
sleep,
Yeah.
and we talked about nutrition too, so that definitely those factors are really important. And we can
Okay.
we'll talk later on about more aspects.
And we get more into depth about
Yeah.
these certain areas. Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right.